Chapter 4: The Map That Lies. Ethan had known, in principle, that saving his father would unravel his map of the future. It was another thing to watch a remembered event simply fail to happen. It came on an ordinary afternoon. He had been holding in the careful place a small fixed memory, a thing that had happened in the first life around this time, a neighbor's move, a small local event he had filed as a landmark to check his bearings against. The date came. The event did not. The neighbor did not move. The small remembered thing simply was not there, the future at that point gone smooth and blank where his memory said something should be. He stood in the ordinary afternoon and felt the ground of his foreknowledge shift under him, and understood in his body now, and not just in his doctrine, that the map was lying to him. It was not lying everywhere. That was the thing he had to learn, which lies were lies. But it was lying enough, and in the places closest to him, and he could no longer simply trust it the way he had for 5 years. So he did what he always did with a damaged tool. He took it apart to learn exactly how it was broken. He went through his foreknowledge methodically, sorting it. And he found that it broke along a clean line, the line between the personal and the impersonal, between the things that had depended on his own family's small history and the things that had not. The personal map was dying. Anything close to him, his family's choices, his neighborhood, the specific people whose lives had touched the coals, the near and detailed knowledge that had let him steer and save, all of it was unraveling, because all of it had hung, in ways large and small, on the death he had prevented. His father alive meant 1,000 small downstream differences, and each difference spawned more, the changes compounding outward year by year until the near future was a country his memory no longer described. The neighbor who did not move was only the first of 1,000 small remembered things that would, from here on, quietly fail to happen. But the impersonal map still held. The great events that had not depended on one carpenter's life, those stood firm. The market crash coming near the end of the decade would still come. It did not care whether David Cole lived. The rise of the companies he had bet the family's small fortune on would still happen. The broad shape of the world's history would hold. And above all, the one landmark that mattered more than every other, the tide, the ether return, the torn sky waiting at the end of the map, that would come regardless, because it was the largest impersonal event there was, the end of the whole world's ordinary age, untouched by anything a boy in Seattle did with his family. The map was half lies now, but the half that remained true was the half that mattered most. He rebuilt his navigation around the surviving truth, and it changed how he moved through the world. Before, he had walked the future like a man reading a detailed street map, knowing every turn. Now he walked it like a sailor with only the fixed stars, a few great certain landmarks high and far, and beneath them an unmapped sea he had to cross by judgment and seamanship, not memory. The fixed stars, the crash, the rise, the tide. By those he could still steer the great course, keep the family's armor growing ahead of the crash, hold the long bet on the companies that would rise, and above all keep his eye always on the tide, the one star he could not afford to misjudge. But the near water, the day-to-day, the personal, that he would have to sail blind, reading the wind and the current as they came, trusting the judgment the second life had taught him instead of the memory that was failing. It was a harder way to sail. It meant more surprises, more risk, more reliance on wits and less on certainty. But it was also, he was coming to feel, a truer way, because a man steering by a detailed map of a dead future was steering by a ghost, and a man steering by the fixed stars and his own judgment was actually, finally, sailing, awake to the real water under him instead of retracing a route already run. And there was a discipline in it. He made himself learn cold. Never trust a personal memory as fact again. The near map was fiction now, and fiction that felt like truth was the most dangerous kind. He would use his remaining personal foreknowledge only as a whisper, a hint, a thing to weigh and verify, never a thing to bet a life on. The fixed stars he would trust. Everything closer, he would check against the real world before he believed it. The flood that had nearly killed his mother had taught him the price of trusting a map after he'd changed the world. He would not pay it twice. He stood in the ordinary afternoon, where a neighbor had not moved, and made his peace with sailing half-blind. It frightened him, a little, the loss of the detailed certainty that had been his greatest weapon, the knowledge that from here on the near future would surprise him more and more. But under the fear, again, was that strange thin freedom he had first felt after the road, that the dying of the personal map meant the second life was becoming real, unscripted, his own. The fixed stars still burned. The tide still waited, the one star he would watch above all others. And between him and it lay an open, unmapped sea that he would cross the way he had crossed everything, by refusing to stop, by reading the water as it came, by trusting the hard-won judgment of a man who had already changed his fate once and meant to change it again. He set the broken map in its proper place, fixed stars trusted, near water sailed by hand, and went on, half-blind and clear-eyed at once, into the unmapped years.